Welcome to Revenue Boost, a marketing podcast, the ultimate resource for business leaders looking to skyrocket your company's growth. I'm your host, Kerry Curran, and this episode is the new CMO Playbook, aligning expertise with business growth goals. Today's special guest is Erica Seidel, leading B2B CMO recruiter and founder of The Connective Good. In this episode, Erica shares her unique perspective on what it takes to find and cultivate top-tier marketing talent that doesn't just make things look pretty, but truly moves the needle on revenue. Whether you're aiming to double your company's revenue or scale your marketing team for sustainable growth, this conversation is packed with actionable insights. So join us as Erica and I explore how today's CMOs can be both change makers and peacemakers, effectively bridging the gap between strategy and execution, and ensuring that marketing has a critical seat at the strategic planning table. If you're ready to align your marketing expertise with your business growth goals, this episode is a must listen. Let's go. Welcome, Erica. We are very excited to have you here today. I'd love for you to introduce yourself and share a bit of your background and expertise.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Kerry. You and I have known each other, I think, a while. I've tried to recruit you for things, and so it's great to see you doing your revenue boost, and great to chat with you. So I run a retained executive search practice called The Connective Good. And my tagline, as you know, is I place the make money marketing leaders and not the make it pretty ones. I've been doing this for, oh my goodness, about 13 years. That's amazing. And I started this because I had previously been at Forrester way back, and I had recruiters calling me and they were saying like, oh, wow, this is the best job ever. But they didn't really understand what they were recruiting for, and they weren't really taking the time to understand me. And I felt like, well, maybe I could do it better by being very niche focused. So initially when I started my practice, it was, the way I described it was the intersection between marketing and analytics and tech and data. And then I just was able to simplify it as I talked to many people and kind of shared my elevator pitch with them. I was able to kind of just characterize it as, no, I place the make money marketing leaders, not the make it pretty ones. So I primarily work with B2B SaaS companies that are in some kind of scale up mode. So maybe a $50 million company wants to become 100 million, maybe 100 million wants to become 200 million, could be 20 million wants to become 50 million, whatever. There's always these like, oh, we're here and we want to get there. And I either am placing the CMO at a smaller company, or I'm helping a CMO at a company of some size build their team.
That's great. And so expand a bit more on your the make money versus make pretty philosophy.
Yeah. Well, right. So like I said, when I started it was a little bit like kind of jumbled the way I talked about it. And, but I was always pulled towards more roles that were like marketing analytics, marketing technology, marketing data, and felt more comfortable with those roles and less about the more kind of fuzzier side of marketing. And I also thought it was important for B2B because, you know, B2C and B2B are different. In B2C, you have marketers who are more likely to have a background as kind of like a general manager. That's not always the case in B2B historically. And again, in B2B SaaS, you know, now it can be, but you know, usually you have people coming from product marketing or demand generation or corporate marketing. And so it was helpful for me to kind of characterize that. Now, I will say that even if somebody is on the brand experience or corporate marketing side, I have seen plenty of those people being very much about making money. It's just more of a longer term thing. And for me, I mean, this ended up just resonating a lot with investors and CEOs, you know, who often don't understand marketing too well. And so I feel like I had to kind of really get it down to the essence. And this is something I always recommend candidates do is make sure they're talking about just the essence and don't anticipate that there's a ton of marketing knowledge on the other side of the table.
Yeah, I know we talked a bit about that, about how the kind of the marketing as a role, as a function, and as a part of the corporate strategy and planning isn't often or always recognized as a critical aspect of the strategy of the business, and the fact that it does connect to making money and not only making pretty. And to your point, like you need both, but it's the connection to the making money side of it that makes the CMO's role more impactful for the business. When you're talking to CEOs, like do they know what they're looking for in a CMO and the role of the CMO?
Usually they need a little bit of help articulating it. And often what happens, as I'm sure you've seen in your career, is they're not quite sure if they need a chief marketing officer or a vice president of marketing. And again, this depends on the size of the business. And sometimes I'll work with businesses that are 30 million in revenue. And, and that this can come up a lot because they're saying like, oh, okay, well, maybe we don't want the CMOs going to like need to have somebody peel their grapes. We want to have a VP of marketing who's like the doer, and that person can help us get from 30 million to 50 million. And then maybe we nestle in a CMO at that point or promote the person at that point.
Yeah.
So I have this slide, which I can share with you, but it's basically a slide that I put together for one of my clients of, do you need a VP of marketing or a CMO? And it's kind of like, do you want somebody to set the growth agenda or support it? Do you want somebody to be more strategic or more operational? Do you want somebody to have that multi-year view or quarter by quarter view? Do you want somebody who's going to hire the experts and be okay not knowing it all? Or do you want the person who's going to be the expert and feel like they have to know it all? Do you want somebody who's kind of board ready, plunk them into board meeting and they'll be fine? Or are you okay with somebody who's kind of developing board presence? Because there's always trade-offs. And I mean, the thing about hiring marketing leaders, as I'm sure you know, they can be very, the people hiring them are like, yes, we want this. Oh, yes, we want both. We want the strategic and the operational. We want the quarter by quarter view and the long-term view. And I understand, right? Because that, is that marketing? Yes. Some questions I ask when I am meeting with CEOs or investors, because often investors are involved in my searches, is at the last board meeting, what was a question that came up about marketing that you struggled to answer or that the marketing leader struggled to answer? So that can kind of pull out, what sometimes what the essence is of the need. And oftentimes, they've been disappointed in their last marketing leader and, they're wondering like, is it the market or the marketer? That's a question that comes up. And sometimes what people say is, well, we have activity, but we don't have results, or, well, we don't have enough leads. The marketing leader is just, saying they want to position, they want to do positioning and branding, but we don't have leads to feed the salespeople. But sometimes it's, oh, we want a strategic partner. Like what got us here won't get us there. We're at a stage of kind of like an inflection point where we need to tackle new markets and new products, and we're going from one product to multiple products or what have you, and sometimes people say like, this is the biggest company that many of us have ever worked in, and we need somebody who has seen this next phase of scale and wants to do it again. Or it could be like, oh, we're heading towards IPO and we want somebody who has done that. So often it's this kind of somebody who has done this before. But really, I mean, I'm curious to hear your take, having, been in similar, conversations and rooms as me. But, I often think it's a little bit of trial and error where I often will present a few candidates and say, okay, this paints a picture, this paints the range of types of people, and you kind of see the reactions and see how people are gravitating. Usually marketing searches, there are a few more candidates than, say, I don't know CFO searches, but like what I understand is you could probably, present 3 candidates and somebody will pick one. And in my CMO searches, usually the clients want to see 5, 6, 7, 8 candidates before they pick one, because there's so many different kind of stripes of CMO or VP of marketing leader.
Yeah. Well, I think that's part of the challenge, right? And it's like aligning the expertise of an individual with the expectations, the evolving
Yeah. Yeah.
expectations and changing expectations. Like when you're saying the marketer or the market, we've definitely seen in the last, 18 to 24, 36 months, the market budgets have changed, but we had a kind of a great growth era from like 20 to 22, despite COVID, and then as 23 came out of it, 24, budgets have been tighter. What I'm hearing is marketers or the executive team is like, let's just get sales. And to your point, like, oh, we don't have time for the branding and the strategy, but it's if you don't have that strategy. So it's finding the marketer that can parallel path, that this is what I'm doing for 6 to 12 months. This is what I'm doing for the next 3 months. And from, what I've seen, that's evolved. It used to be the CMO is primarily focused on corporate strategy and let's get that 3 to 6 months. Now we need someone that's going to fill our lead pipeline ongoing a lot now. So how have you seen it evolve over the past few years?
Yeah, I mean, I agree, right? We were in this period of, recruiting it was nutsy for a few years there.
Yeah.
There were companies calling me and saying, "Oh, we'll pay you double to do this search," and I'd be like, "No, I don't want to. I don't want to be owned." Like I don't know. That just introduces kind of complexity to it, and I think in some cases people hired great people, but maybe it wasn't their first, second, third choice, and now they're seeking to kind of opportunistically upgrade the people that they had hired before. So I see in some ways, in some situations, there's an upgrade, and this can be good, especially because it's like, oh, well, a decent marketer can do okay if it's a tide lifting all boats, or like if the market is great, a decent marketer can do that. But if the market is maybe a little bit, if the waters are a little bit more choppy, maybe you need a more seasoned sailor, I don't know, to kind of navigate those waters. So sometimes it's an upgrading of the role. Sometimes, as you say, it is a kind of down scoping of the role. And it can be even downgrading. Some companies are saying, oh, we used to have a CMO, and this makes me sad, but our next marketing leader is going to be a VP of marketing. Maybe we put product marketing under product management. Maybe we put corporate marketing into its own kind of comms, area. And that, I mean, time will tell how this works and whether it works more for smaller companies versus bigger companies, because you don't have as much of that connective tissue across, across marketing. And also, if you're going to bump down the role of the CMO to a VP of marketing, I wouldn't worry so much about the titles, right? Because you could have a VP of marketing with a really robust mandate and a CMO who's at a, 2-person company. So, but if you're taking that marketing leader and bumping them off the executive team, as happens in some cases with like a chief growth officer or chief revenue officer nestled in between, then the marketer's impact can be limited, because a good marketer is kind of like a shuttle diplomat, right? They're connecting across all the different functions of the company and they're adding value. But if they're not in those conversations where they can kind of tap into the other areas of the business, then they're, it's almost like their impact is downgraded even more. So that is a concern. I think there's also this, like you say, more of a focus on short term. And most of the good marketing leaders I know are saying, well, I know short term and long term are both important. So maybe I'll talk more about the short term stuff, but I'm still doing the long term stuff, right? It's like I'm not getting any break from doing that. In terms of other things I'm seeing, like maybe more of a focus on, retention marketing, customer marketing, community building is, there are like a lot of, spikes on that. Obviously the AI, interest in AI. And as part of that, this kind of radical efficiency is kind of needed. Like a lot of companies are saying, oh, it used to be growth at all costs, and now it's growth at less cost. And
but you still need to hit that number.
but you still need to hit that number. Exactly. But I'm wondering what you think about like this, kind of, brain dump that I just, gave you.
Yeah, no, thanks. No, like you're in it, right? You're talking to the decision makers and the executives that are choosing who's going to lead their marketing and their business strategy. And so, yeah, I mean, I remember when we talked before and you mentioned again, like marketing needs a seat at that strategic planning table, and marketing needs to, it's not just, to your point, it's not just the brand, but the brand, and it's not just driving sales. It's that connected tissue between all the aspects. And you brought up community building, retention. That's where I see a critical aspect of marketing needs to be part of that strategic vision and plan for the company, so that it is woven into all aspects, so that your client services or your client success or your delivery team is living and breathing the same messaging that your marketing is saying and that your sales is saying. And I think that's where it's like the educating the executives to understand that you're not just bringing someone in just to fill your lead pipeline for the next 6 months, that this is your growth will depend on that connective tissue. Right. I love that concept. And so it's been really interesting, but I think it makes your job even more challenging, because finding that leader that has the marketing, that understands all the different components, the tech and tools that you could be using, and being able to evangelize that across the organization. So it's definitely a challenging time for hiring and finding the right CMO, but also educating the leadership on everything that can be included. So.
Yeah. It's interesting you said that. Yeah, there's this focus on like educating, and yes, the connective tissue, but also educating. And I think there's a lot of CMOs who are like, I should have a seat at the table. And it's like, well, if you're complaining that you don't have it, and then why is somebody in a new company going to give that to you? And so I think one has to be earning that spot, yes, but not, pounding their fist for it. And I just wrote something yesterday, and it was about basically I brought up this notion of a CMO is also a chief marketing education officer. So we've talked about, there's chief marketing officer, and obviously there's this whole chief market officer concept, which I think is great. But as part of that, when you're hiring this person, they're also going to be a chief marketing education officer, meaning they often have to educate the company about what marketing is, what marketing can do for the company, and to do that in a way that is not too strident, and but makes it feel as if the company has already been going in this direction, and they're helping them, like, kind of shepherd them along. Like I often think about it as this kind of paradox between this, like, that you have to be a change maker and a peacemaker at the same time as a marketing leader. And part of that is kind of bringing people along with you and making it seem as if they're not making as much of a change as maybe they are. And those are the best marketing leaders in my view. It's not about the technology. So I mean, as long as I can hire somebody who can manage that, and as long as the data is not a total mess, but it's that becoming that kind of educator in chief for people who probably, like CEOs or investors, who very few of them, maybe 1 in 100, will admit they don't really understand marketing. I did have one who, God bless him, but they think they understand it, and of course, since marketing is often the growth strategy for like often companies are bought or invested in with the idea that marketing and sales are going to fuel the growth, and that's great. So who's going to admit that they don't really understand the aspects of marketing? And that's why the ability of a marketer to educate in a unique way is, I think, really critically important.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because for the concept of the people that say, "Oh, I don't understand marketing," for me, I'm like, wait. It's not that hard. But then as we start peeling back the layers, it is complicated, and there is a lot to it. And and it's not just something fluffy, and it's getting more more complex and more critical. And so from your perspective, like what would be your, like, do you have an overarching recommendation for the brands that need to see growth, what they kind of should be looking for in their CMO?
Oh, I mean, it depends, for each company, it's different, right? And, you have to look at what they have, what stage they're at and what they have in place now and what's the marketing team like. And, I often just build with them a kind of from to structure. Like, okay, you're whatever, 50 million now, you want to get to 200 million. You are, one product, you want to get to 4 products. You have one go-to-market motion, you want to add in a channel motion. I don't know, I'm making this up. And then it's like, that's often kind of like an overall business kind of from to, but then we can present that to marketers and say, hey, this is the mandate. And that kind of helps us structure the search. And so, there's always some combination of, product marketing, slash messaging, positioning, and demand marketing operations. Although marketing operations, it can make everything go so much more smoothly and efficiently if that's done right. But often the CEO is struggling to understand the other aspects of marketing, corporate marketing, brand demand and product marketing, that the marketing operations gets kind of nestled under business operations or demand, which, okay, but sometimes that's its own pillar in and of itself.
Yeah. No, as you just pointed out, it's very complex and it's not, one size fits all. And I think it just, again, points to the fact that the strong CMO needs to be able to pivot and apply different levers, and that it's not just one lever. I think that's, kind of the key component, and it takes time. So,
I mean, they have to speak investor, they have to speak finance, they have to speak product, they have to speak sales, especially, I think, one key thing is like, what is that person's relationship with the sales leader? What are backdoor references saying about that? And also in many cases, a CEO is looking for that strategic partner to kind of chart the course of the business. And one thing I often will say to candidates is ask a CEO, who do you turn to when you're looking for that kind of friend or like who's your go-to person, see who they kind of gravitate to help them, think of new ideas or such, that because that's telling about kind of what orientation their CEO has.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's a really strong recommendation. And no, and thank you. So you've provided us a lot of food for thought for when it comes to kind of the right match for strengths and capabilities and skill sets, but also, what the hiring committee and the CEO need to be thinking about as well, because obviously the goal is to set everyone up for success. But yeah, no, this is great. Thank you, Erica, so much.
Sure, no problem.
Great. Well, hopefully we can have you join again. As you're talking about sales and marketing, I was like, that's a whole other podcast. So
that is a whole other podcast. Yeah.
We'll get you back for that one. But thank you. We really appreciate your time. So thanks so much.
No worries. A pleasure to chat with you, Kerry.